Good afternoon, everyone. Today we turn to the legislative branch, also known as Congress, which the Constitution established as the first branch of government. Article 1 comes before the presidency and the courts for a reason. The framers saw lawmaking, the power of the purse, the power to deliberate, and the power to represent the people, as the heart of American democracy. Constitutional Foundation's Congress is bicameral, meaning it has two chambers, the House of Representatives, designed to represent the people directly, with seats apportioned by population. Members serve 2-year terms, making them more responsive to shifting public opinion. The Senate, originally chosen by state legislatures but now directly elected, was intended to represent the states and act as a stabilizing force. Senators serve 6-year terms, with staggered elections to ensure continuity. This bicameral design reflects the Great Compromise between large and small states at the Constitutional Convention. Population-based representation in the House and equal representation in the Senate. The Constitution carefully outlines the powers of Congress in Article 1, Section 8, and these powers form the backbone of the legislative branch. The framers wanted Congress to be the central lawmaking body of the new republic, and they granted it a wide range of responsibilities. At the core are the enumerated powers. These are specific written authorities given directly to Congress. Among the most important are the powers to tax and spend, to collect revenue for the government, and decide how those funds will be allocated. This financial authority gives Congress tremendous influence, since no money can be spent without its approval. Congress also regulates interstate and foreign commerce, a power that has grown enormously over time as the national economy has expanded. Additional enumerated powers include the ability to declare war, raise and support armies and navies, establish post offices, coin money, and create rules of naturalization. Together, these powers ensure Congress can legislate on the fundamental needs of a functioning nation. Beyond these specific grants, the framers included the Necessary and Proper Clause, often called the Elastic Clause. This provision gives Congress the ability to make all laws necessary and proper for carrying out its enumerated duties. In practice, it provides Congress with implied powers, the flexibility to adapt to new circumstances the framers could not have foreseen. For example, although the Constitution says nothing about creating a national bank, the Supreme Court in McCulloch v. Maryland, 1819, upheld Congress's authority to establish one as a means of carrying out its power to regulate commerce and collect taxes. More recently, Congress has used this flexibility to regulate air travel, establish the draft, and oversee the internet, all modern issues unimaginable in 1787. Congress's role is not limited to lawmaking. It also exercises oversight, monitoring the executive branch to ensure laws are faithfully executed and to prevent abuses of power. Through hearings, investigations, and subpoena powers, congressional committees hold presidents and federal agencies accountable. In addition, Congress has the power of impeachment and removal. The House of Representatives may impeach the president or other federal officials for high crimes and misdemeanors, and the Senate then holds the trial to determine removal from office. This has been used sparingly but dramatically, as in the impeachments of Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and the near impeachment of Richard Nixon. Congress also has a role in foreign policy and checks on presidential power. While the president negotiates treaties, the Senate must ratify them by a 2/3 vote. Similarly, major presidential appointments, ambassadors, federal judges, cabinet secretaries, and other top officials require Senate confirmation. This gives Congress a say in shaping both the executive branch and the federal judiciary. Altogether, the powers of Congress reveal its dual nature. It is both a lawmaking institution with the ability to craft policies for the nation, and a watchdog that checks and balances the other branches of government. With its enumerated powers, implied powers through the Elastic Clause, and its critical oversight functions, Congress remains one of the most powerful and complex institutions in the American political system. At its core, Congress is designed to be the people's branch of government, and that means its legitimacy depends on representation. But what does representation really mean? Political scientists often distinguish between two different types: descriptive representation and substantive representation. Descriptive representation asks whether Congress looks like the people it serves. Do its members reflect the diversity of the nation in terms of gender, race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic class, or professional background? For much of U.S. history, Congress was dominated by white, wealthy men, a narrow slice of American society. In recent decades, representation has broadened, with more women, people of color, and members of different faiths serving in the House and Senate. Advocates argue that having lawmakers who share the lived experiences of their constituents can bring unique perspectives to policymaking and build trust among underrepresented groups. For example, a Latina congresswoman may be more attuned to immigration challenges faced by her community, or a veteran may approach defense policy with first-hand knowledge of military life. But representation is not only about appearance or identity. Substantive representation is about whether members of Congress act in ways that serve their constituents' interests, regardless of whether they share the same background. A wealthy senator may still champion policies that benefit working-class families, and a legislator from one ethnic group may still advocate effectively for another. In this sense, representation is judged by outcomes and advocacy, not by personal identity. Representation also plays out in day-to-day work through constituency service, sometimes called casework. Members of Congress and their staff spend a significant amount of time helping individuals back home navigate government bureaucracy. This can mean assisting a veteran with benefits, helping a family resolve an immigration issue, or ensuring that Social Security checks arrive on time. These personal touches not only solve problems, but also build political loyalty, reinforcing the sense that representatives are truly serving the people who elected them. Finally, the reality of re-election pressures shapes how members represent their constituents. House members, who face election every 2 years, are especially sensitive to public opinion and often focus on local concerns that resonate directly with voters. Senators, with 6-year terms, have more breathing room, but they too must keep an eye on how their decisions will play at home. The desire to secure another term can drive legislative behavior, influencing which bills members support, which committees they serve on, and how they communicate their work to constituents. Together, these layers, descriptive and substantive representation, constituency service, and electoral pressures, make representation in Congress both complex and dynamic. It is not only about who sits in the chamber, but also about what they do once they're there and how well they bridge the gap between Washington and the people they serve. Congressional organization Congress may look like a single lawmaking body, but in reality, it is a highly structured and carefully organized institution. Both the House of Representatives and the Senate are organized primarily around political parties, which shape leadership, committees, and the flow of legislation. In the House, the majority party holds tremendous power. The Speaker of the House, elected by members but always from the majority party, is one of the most powerful figures in Washington. The Speaker not only presides over debates but also controls the legislative calendar, decides which bills come to the floor, and plays a key role in shaping the party's agenda. Beneath the Speaker are the Majority Leader and Whip, who help coordinate party strategy and keep members in line during important votes. The minority party also has leaders, but their role is often defensive, challenging the majority's priorities and working to protect their own party's interests. In the Senate, leadership is more decentralized. The Constitution technically names the Vice President as the presiding officer, but in practice, day-to-day power rests with the Senate Majority Leader. This leader controls which bills come up for debate and sets the pace of legislative business. Because Senate rules allow for extended debate, including the filibuster, minority parties have greater leverage than in the House, making the Majority Leader's job both powerful and precarious. Beyond party leadership, committees are where much of the real work of Congress takes place. Given the sheer volume of bills introduced each session, often thousands, it would be impossible for every member to study every proposal. Committees act as specialized teams focusing on particular areas like defense, foreign affairs, finance, agriculture, or education. They hold hearings, invite expert testimony, draft and revise legislation, and oversee how laws are implemented by executive agencies. For example, the Armed Services Committee shapes military policy, while the Ways and Means Committee in the House controls taxation. Subcommittees drill down even further, handling specific aspects of each policy area. Without committees, Congress would be unmanageable. The legislative process. The saying that making laws is like making sausage, you don't want to see how it's done, reflects just how complex and messy the legislative process can be. A bill may start with an idea from a member of Congress, the president, an interest group, or even an ordinary citizen. Once introduced, it is referred to the relevant committee, where it may be studied, debated, and amended. Most bills die here, never making it past the committee stage, a reminder that the system is designed to filter and narrow proposals. If a bill survives committee, it moves to the floor for debate. In the House, debate is tightly controlled by the Rules Committee, which sets time limits and decides what kinds of amendments are allowed. In the Senate, debate is more open, but that freedom comes with the possibility of a filibuster, where senators can block action by talking indefinitely unless 60 senators vote to end debate through cloture. This makes bipartisanship especially important in the upper chamber. After debate and possible amendments, the bill goes to a vote. If passed, it moves to the other chamber, where the process begins again. If both chambers pass different versions, a conference committee is convened to reconcile the differences. The final compromise must then be approved again by both the House and Senate. Once a bill reaches the president's desk, the process isn't over. The president can sign the bill into law, veto it, or take no action. If the president issues a veto, Congress can override it with a 2/3 vote in both chambers, though this is rare and requires broad bipartisan agreement. This deliberate, often slow-moving process reflects the framers' design. They wanted lawmaking to require broad consensus rather than narrow or temporary majorities. The hurdles a bill must clear, committees, debates, votes in both chambers, presidential approval, ensure that only proposals with significant support have a chance of becoming law. In this way, the legislative process embodies the checks and balances that are central to American constitutional design. Challenges and criticisms. Despite its central role in American democracy, Congress faces persistent challenges that fuel frustration among both lawmakers and citizens. One of the most serious issues is partisan polarization. Over the past several decades, the two major parties have become more ideologically distant from one another. Democrats have generally moved further left, Republicans further right, leaving little room for overlap or compromise. Where once bipartisan coalitions could pass major legislation, today it is common for bills to receive support from only one party. This polarization makes consensus building extremely difficult and feeds public perception of constant conflict in Washington. Closely tied to polarization is gridlock. When different parties control the House, Senate, and presidency, a condition known as divided government, policymaking often slows to a crawl. Even urgent issues such as immigration reform, gun control, or climate change can languish for years without resolution because neither side is willing to give ground. At times, this gridlock leads to dramatic consequences like government shutdowns when Congress cannot agree on a federal budget. Another criticism is the incumbency advantage. Once elected, members of Congress are notoriously difficult to unseat. They benefit from name recognition, established fundraising networks, and often district lines drawn to favor one party, a process known as gerrymandering. Incumbents also use the perks of office like constituent services and media visibility to strengthen their ties at home. As a result, while public approval of Congress as a whole is consistently low, individual representatives are often reelected at rates exceeding 90%. This creates the paradox of voters distrusting the institution but continuing to support their own member. Finally, public disapproval is a constant challenge. Year after year, surveys show Congress ranking among the least trusted institutions in American life. Citizens see the gridlock, the partisan bickering, and the lack of progress on key issues, and they grow cynical about its effectiveness. Yet paradoxically, many voters still express approval of their personal representatives, a phenomenon sometimes called the Feno paradox. This disconnect helps explain why Congress as an institution remains unpopular even as its members keep their seats. Oversight and accountability. Despite these criticisms, it's important to remember that Congress has vital responsibilities beyond passing laws. One of its most important roles is oversight of the executive branch. Through hearings and investigations, congressional committees can call government officials, military leaders, or even private citizens to testify under oath. These proceedings shine light on government actions and hold agencies accountable to the public. For example, oversight hearings have investigated everything from military conduct during wars to the handling of public health crises. Congress also uses its power of the purse to keep the executive branch in check. Because no federal money can be spent without congressional approval, legislators can restrict or expand funding for programs, shape agency priorities, and even punish misconduct by withholding funds. In more extreme cases, Congress can turn to the power of impeachment. The House of Representatives has the authority to impeach federal officials, including the president, for high crimes and misdemeanors. If the House votes to impeach, the Senate then holds a trial to determine whether to convict and remove the official from office. Impeachment has been used sparingly in U.S. history, but remains the strongest tool of legislative oversight. Presidents Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump were impeached, though none were removed, while Richard Nixon resigned before the House could vote on his impeachment. Taken together, oversight and accountability remind us that Congress is not just a lawmaking body, it is also a guardian of constitutional balance. By monitoring, investigating, and at times confronting the executive, Congress ensures that no branch of government grows too powerful, preserving the checks and balances at the heart of the American system. Conclusion. The legislative branch is the engine of American democracy, but also one of its most criticized institutions. It embodies representation, deliberation, and compromise, but also polarization, partisanship, and gridlock. As we study Congress, we see both the promise of democratic governance and the frustrations of collective decision-making. In our next session, we'll turn to Chapter 12, where we'll examine public opinion, how citizens' beliefs shape and are shaped by the political system.